Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Anderson, and I'm the program manager for the NAU Assistive Technology Center and their AAC Evaluation and Training Program. Welcome to the last of our series of webinars on AAC implementation this semester. And today we have Doug Cutler from Smartbox here, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. As Nicole said, my name's Doug Cutler. I am a product specialist with Smartbox Assistive Technologies. And for those who haven't heard of Smartbox, I've been with them since July, and it's been a great experience. So I'm going to start kind of getting into the slides here, and we'll start the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can address it either right then or as it comes up in the presentation. So with that, I will dive into it. Get my screen shared up here. And hopefully you guys are seeing this. All right.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So let's see, there we go. To start off there, I just wanted to hit some of the learning objectives. And I think this sounds basic, but it'd be pretty important in this context because I'm guessing a lot of people don't know about Smartbox yet. But an understanding of Smartbox and the language systems within Grid 3, and with specific focus on SuperCore and learning grid activities. So SuperCore being the core language, or kind of our flagship vocabulary. Also, number 2, an understanding of Grid 3 Windows software and its applications in programming and modeling. We'll get to that. Knowledge of online grid sets that can be incorporated into individualized Grid 3 platforms, using core words within AAC language systems, for activities, and some Smartbox website resources to enhance learning. So I know it's going to be a lot. I'm hoping to get through all of it. When it's timed in practice, it always goes well. So if I don't get to something, please feel free to contact me, and I can always talk you through something individually and get information out there. So in this context, I do think it's important to talk about, like, who is Smartbox. Again, Smartbox is a company that was born in the UK. It's been in its present form for about 15 years. And before that was actually a company called Sensory Software, if you've heard of that. If you've been around long enough and did work with PDAs, you might have worked with Sensory Software. So what Smartbox was initially known for is their Grid 3 software and grid software. Grid 3 is the latest version of it. There was a Grid 2. And that's really what set Smartbox apart. Recently, we've introduced communication devices that are customized. And I'll touch on them briefly here as well, because I know we want to discuss core word, but I think it's important to see where this is all coming from and how it plays into communication devices and communication support. So although Smartbox has been around for a long time, we haven't had a huge US presence. And that's where things are new here in the US. So we are starting up. You've always been able to get Smartbox products, but a lot of the support, a lot of the interaction was coming from the UK. And as of recently, we are building our US network. And that includes a home office that's actually outside of Pittsburgh. We have AT supports there and IT supports. We also have product specialists that we're starting to fill out throughout the US. So we've got the East Coast and Midwest. Myself, I support Arizona and Colorado. We've got the Northwest as well. And then, like I said, we create custom communication devices with environmental controls built in addition to Apple and tablet communication devices. So Overall, Smartbox is devoted to helping individuals communicate and live a more independent life, and we really strive to do that. So with that being said, this is the Smartbox product range. So as I said, we recently came out with our line of GridPad communication devices. So these are customized communication devices. They range from the GridPad 10S, which is a 10-inch screen. And what you can't see there is a second screen on the rear, the GridPad 12 and the GridPad 15. Like I said, all of those are customized communication devices that we make. They're all Windows-based devices, and they all run a full functioning version of Grid 3. Access-wise, Grid 3 can handle the GridPad devices in Grid 3 can handle touch, eye gaze, switch, and pointing. There's all of those accessibility features are housed within Grid 3 and run through Grid 3. We also, like I said, have our tablet series. There's the TalkPad, which is iOS based. And the reason I mentioned that accessibility features run through Grid 3 on those customized devices and those quote unquote dedicated devices is that with your TalkPad, your access method actually runs through the iOS accessibility features. So that is a little bit different. Although we'll be focusing on Grid 3 and Grid 3 software today, it is important to know that we have Grid for iPad that's running on our iOS tablets and devices. There's not a whole lot of difference, but I'll hit a couple of them as we go through the presentation. And like I said, one of which is the accessibility features. So, and then we also have our touchpad. The touchpad is a Windows-based. It's actually a Surface tablet, and because it is running Windows, is running a full functioning version of Grid 3. Again, all your accessibility features are going to be into Grid 3 as well. And so those features that differ in the iOS version are there in the touchpad. It's running Grid 3 as opposed to Grid for iPad. Basically, that's what that comes down to. So what is Grid 3? Grid 3 allows you to say what you want, whenever you want to say it, and to whoever you want to say it to. Grid 3 is really a software package that, that holds a lot of your communication packages and communication styles. So you've got text communication, symbol communication. Grid 3 also houses your computer control, your environmental controls, your accessible apps, interactive learning, and then some education as well. Again, for this presentation, we'll focus on the symbol communication. But when you're looking at Grid 3 as a whole, Grid 3 incorporates all of this. So Grid 3 is an AAC platform. It has all forms of physical access. It has the integrated environmental controls. We talked about the ability for environmental controls as well, but it's also got the ability to integrate with your phone, email, and social media. And it provides a continuum of communication from birth to literacy. As I said, there's symbol-based communication, there's text-based communication, all accessible within Grid 3. And then there's Grid for iPad. Grid for iPad, again, runs on iOS. It's touch and switch accessible. And it comes with a lot of what Grid 3, a lot of the language sets that Grid 3 comes with as well. With a couple exceptions, and I think we're going to hit on that later. But Grid 3, Grid for iPad work together, and we're going to talk about the software and how you have access to the software a little bit later on here as well. And I think you'll see that synergistic component there where everything kind of works together. So the landing page on Grid 3 is going to be Grid Explorer. It holds all your user sets. There's multiple folders and multiple screens. It's easy to rearrange and manage. and you can create and export and import all your grid sets as well. There's also multiple languages built into Grid 3. So that's not something that's an add-on. It's just a matter of going in and finding the language that you need. And those grid sets have been translated for you. So what we're going to focus on again on Grid 3 is that core word language sets that are in Grid 3. And your core word language sets are going to be SuperCore is the flagship of it. SuperCore comes in a 30 location, 50 location, and then there's also built-in learning grids. And although the learning grids are not necessarily a language system, they are a step into SuperCore. So I can show those briefly and show you how they kind of get somebody started with communication or with even an access method if you're practicing an access method. Both the 30 and the 50 locations come in a child and a teen version. Those are differentiated basically by a little bit of vocabulary. So some of the social vocabulary is a little bit different. And then in a teen version, you're going to have, it's actually a teen and adult version. And what you're going to have is some slang. So know off the bat that those settings might want to be changed if you're working with a young teenager or someone who's in the teen version that shouldn't be. There is some explicit language. There's also some social language, and all meant to address various communication styles that people have, and not disregard somebody's ability to communicate. So Symbol Talker is another symbol set that's included within Grid 3. Symbol Talker runs A, B, C, and D. I noted C and D on here because although Symbol Talker is not it's not necessarily a progression. You don't have to go through A, B, C, and D to be a good user of Symbol Talker. It is progressive. So Symbol Talker A is very topic-based. Symbol Talker B, again, is very topic-based, but starts including some chunked core language. And then you get into C and D, which have a little bit of core in there that combines with those topical languages or topical vocabulary that you've seen in A and B. One thing that is of note is that word power is in Grid 3, and it is standard in Grid 3 in English. You get word power 25, 60, and 100. And although I won't be talking about it, at least not much in this presentation, I did want people to know it was available because it is a core word language set that is in there and available as available to be used. This is a noted difference though. It is not, word power is not available in Grid for iPad. So just like I said, it was important to set that topic early. And then as we go through, I'll make a couple of notes in there as well. And then Beeline. Beeline is a very intense, high cell count, core word language vocabulary set that also has keyboard built in. So it's someone that's definitely got some literacy skills and maybe is looking for some quicker access or quicker rate by incorporating some of the core word that's built into Beeline. So I didn't think I had to hit on this too much. I'm sure you guys have heard it throughout the presentation series and you know, in your day-to-day work, but what is core vocabulary? Very simply, it's the most common words that make up what we say. So about 80% of the words we use daily are core words. It allows you to communicate a lot of different reasons with fewer cells and fewer words. So core words are flexible. They keep you from having to do massive amounts of programming as well. And they can be used in multiple contexts. So the example here is turn, which could be used for positioning. It could be turn taking and turning pages in a book. All of that being being used based on the context and not having to be necessarily defined, but able to go across environments and then be used within, be paired with some fringe vocabulary. So what is fringe vocabulary? Those are the words that are more specific to a topic, environment, or an individual. This is where your programming comes in. These are those specific nouns that really define a language system. So I want being your core, bubbles being your fringe, open being your core, bubbles being your fringe. So the use of core words and then combined with the fringe vocabulary are what make a language system and what make communication so strong and so powerful. So this is SuperCore. SuperCore focuses on a core vocabulary on your front page, your landing page. I'm actually going to demo some of this for you so we can see it in action a little bit. Something that's a little bit different is we also make use of dynamic columns. You get access to everyday language. You get access to some fringe vocabulary while still keeping access to your core vocabulary. And so the things that are most relevant, the things that come out most frequently will be in those dynamic columns. Paired with your core vocabulary on the front page, it makes a really strong language system. And then you've got your topics, what we call topics, and that's your fringe vocabulary. That's your categorized vocabulary page that I think people are used to and have been called many other things, groups, topics. So, like I said, learning grids are also included here. They are kind of a, how do we want to say it? They're kind of a friend of SuperCore. The learning grids are people who are beginning their AAC journey. They are, they include some core word, they include some fringe words, but really they're activity-based. They're meant for someone to get up and going relatively quickly. And that not only is the user, but also the communication partner. It's great. They're great on their own when you are getting someone who's also just learning an access method. It allows for some practice. It allows for introduction to core word before you have a massive page of having to build language. This gives you the opportunity on a single page, either with 12 locations or 20 locations, to go through specific activities and start getting used to core pairing with fringe. So at this point, I'm going to try and change screens here, and we'll take a look at grid 3. I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but this is available. This can be available to you. We do trial versions of grid 3, and essentially it's a functioning version of grid 3 where the speech will expire after about 60 days, leaving you with all of your language sets, leaving you with the ability to use grid 3 not only to learn for yourself, but also be able to model, to be able to print low-tech boards, to be able to really engage with and feel more comfortable with the people around you who are interacting and using grid 3. So this is our landing page here. If you can see my screen there, after the download, you get a grid 3 icon. Once you open, it opens into a user area. You can have multiple user areas in grid 3. Most of our users will have a singular user area based on their needs. However, some of us who are doing evaluations, some of us who maybe are teaching who have multiple students may end up with multiple users. It might be a good way to kind of differentiate how you use the language sets and how you use the vocabulary. In this case, I'll go into our test and demo and open. And what you're going to see here is essentially a version of Grid 3 as you would get it. So as you open up Grid 3 for the first time, this is pretty close to what you're going to see. You won't see SuperCore 50 in Spanish. However, that is something that you can download. Over on the left at the top is your settings. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up SuperCore. Actually, I'm going to open up Learning Grids for you. So as I said, you get 12 and 20 locations in Learning Grids. There's daily activities, and then there's also play activities. If we open the play activities in the 12 locations, we can see activity-specific learning grids, such as bubbles.
Want. Again. Blow. Bubbles.
The idea here is that, again, the language is really going to feed into SuperCore and into a core vocabulary set. The other thing that you're going to see here is that this language will replicate itself in SuperCore. It's also meant to, again, have someone practice access methods, but it's also meant for a communication partner who may not be familiar with AAC to open something up right away and be able to get going with a pretty concrete example and a pretty concrete way to use language, practice language, and also have fun. Anytime I want to go back, I'm going to Grid Explorer. This takes me to my main page here. We can also look at the play in a 20 count cell. And you can see you get a little bit more core vocabulary.
Like. Bubbles. Blow. More. Pop. Pop. Pop.
Okay. All right. Let's go into SuperCore 50 now. And I'll show you some of the things that we talked about. We have the theory, and now we have kind of the actual application. So starting with your core words on the left, because everything tends to move left to right as we would with literacy. You get your pronouns, your sentence starters.
Like. This.
And you also get your actions in green. It's a based on the Fitzgerald key, it's a loose translation, but pronouns, your action area, your articles, and then these are the dynamic columns that we briefly talked about. Within each category, you have an option to look at more, whether it's more people, more questions, an extended version of actions, more descriptors or adjectives, and then your articles or little words. Now your dynamic columns, when we start looking at that, if we look at play again, we tend to get a lot of the same language and the same activities that you were seeing in the learning grids. So now the second thing to notice is that when I go into bubbles and I have that vocabulary available, I don't lose my access to the core words.
It is popping.
The other thing that you'll notice is that the grammar is built in. It's supposed to be predictive. And another thing to mention here is that with core word vocabularies, you really are getting not only communication, but language learning. Core word is meant for building. It's meant to be dynamic. It's meant to be versatile.
It is good.
The purple buttons that I haven't talked about yet, these are predictive buttons. They are actually what we call useful next words. The idea behind SuperCore is that, the SuperCore part of prediction was not that it's word prediction, because word prediction can change on you all the time based on how the computer is reading it and how the software is reading what you do. However, SuperCore is based to have motor planning built in. It's based on having a really predictive nature, and it's based on research. So as I start creating a sentence, it's not predicting, it's giving me the next useful word that would typically come behind the word that I've chosen. And what makes that special is that although it is useful and it seems that it could be a little bit random, it's not random at all. If we start over, we get the same next useful words popping up again.
Like some.
The last thing to look at on this front page is the magic wand, and that's your fixer. Your fixer is going to be where some settings are. It's also where you can fix morphology. And that's the basis behind that magic wand. I think when people see it for the first time, they're not sure what to make of it.
Stop.
But you can see here how it's added the morphology that I need in order to create a sentence that is unique and applies to the situation. So, and last, like I said, we're going to go into topics. So this is what I think people are familiar with in seeing that the language system has categorized vocabulary that paired with that core word on the front page makes it an expansive language system. The other thing to note here is that, like I said, SuperCore really does work on trying to be consistent. And it does that throughout the language system, not only in, as you saw, the next useful word that comes up time and time again in the same area, but also with where vocabulary was placed. Now, SuperCore has something like 2,500 words built into it, so it's hard to do it exact every time. But you'll notice that in vehicles, we have fire truck and police car right in the middle of the display. If we jump home, go to people, and then we go to look at some jobs, we're going to find firefighter and police officer in the same place. So throughout SuperCore, you can find some of that consistency that's built into it. Jump back here. And I'm going to go to Grid Explorer. So that's SuperCore in a nutshell. And that is really the flagship of the core word vocabulary. We can take a look into a couple of these other things. Again, this all comes with Grid 3, but you've got SuperCore 30. That's set up the exact same way. Core vocabulary, Fitzgerald key, pronouns, actions, your adjectives, your articles, and then into your dynamic columns. You still have topics. And you can see how this kind of would lead into a SuperCore 50. Again, all access methods are accessible and ready to be used within the settings of Grid 3. Everything's customizable within topics. We've also provided areas for you to be able to customize even more. Customizing people, being able to take photos, all of that is obviously available in Grid 3. The other thing I wanted to show you is that underneath your settings, you do have the option to print. There we go. So when you do print, you can make low-tech versions of the SuperCore language set. You can actually make any grid set. You can use it for activity-based displays. You could use it for configuring and building communication books. You could use it to cut up into sentence strips. You know, however you want to do it, but basically you get a full printout. One tip that I will give here, I think if we put something into the message window,
like going to the store.
And then we come in here and we try to print. It's going to try to print the message window for us. So know if you're having a little bit of issue and wondering why you're not getting anything, you may have something in the message window that's preventing you from being able to print the entire board and using it as a more of like a piece of equipment for modeling or as an activity board or whatever you're looking to do. Let me go back into here. So another thing I want to show you here while we're in the demo portion is that you can add grids and online grid sets. So when you're talking about having a core vocabulary and having fun with core words, Grid 3 allows you to pull in a lot of things that can be used as add-ons to your language system. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. Open our settings, and I'm going to add a grid set. And you can see that as we go to add a grid set, there's symbol communication, text communication, or interactive learning. Education comes online because we are online. You won't see that one if you are offline right now. You can create a blank grid, and you can also use down here our online grids. Going into online grids, you're going to find that there's a lot of content that people have populated. Some have come from evaluators, some have come from families working with students or with children, some have come from therapists. It all depends. But there are adapted books. And basically the point is that this content is really, it's available to you. That content can be pulled into a grid set that you're using for language and combined to make it so that you have another engaging way to use and to talk about language, to practice language, and to make it a lot more fun in addition to being an academic skill. So I'm gonna come out of here. And that is available to you, again, as part of the downloadable trial. I'm gonna go ahead and switch screens again. Come back to the presentation part. All right. So there are a couple strategies that we have. Just some informational stuff here, and that is that we do have Simple AAC. Simple AAC is a resource available to you through Smartbox that's just not necessarily the gospel, but it is just important information. It talks about how you can use AAC so that people who are not necessarily familiar and communication partners that just need reminders or aren't familiar can get going and have a way to talk about AAC and interact with the user. So showing, modeling, keeping it interesting. It takes time, so months and months. Pause. Language, use different types of words, describing words, action words, not just nouns, and explore. Allow our students to explore, allow our users to explore, and make it so that it's always available. You can add words to the fringe and also allow for comments. Commenting on what's happening and using the language system that the user is using. So making use of those resources, such as the Grid 3 trial, the demo software, and also the low-tech language boards, the low-tech printouts, and being able to model off those. The Grid 3 trial software is available from our website. Like I said, it's 60 days and then continues to be active so that you can actually use those features that are important. It's good for learning, modeling, printing activity boards. You print and create low-tech communication boards. And the one thing that I haven't touched on yet is remote editing. This becomes an important feature when you're using or when you're working with someone that is using Smartbox Grid 3 software. Having that downloaded trial does not keep you from being able to remotely edit. So remote editing is the ability to work from that PC and be able to actively make change on a user's Grid 3 boards or Grid 3 sets. And that can be done on Grid 3 software. It can also be done on Grid for iPad. It works for both. Essentially what happens is we have a Smartbox account that is a Smartbox email account that's associated with a Dropbox account. And the changes happen once the user connects to the internet again, the changes happen fairly quickly. And that's, again, a feature that although you have Grid 3 as a trial software, it's still an active feature and a resource that is extremely useful and extremely important. So there's also some website resources that I've included here, one including the training center at thinksmartbox.com, and that's it's actually a nice resource list of Grid 3 trainings that are broken down into segments. Grid 3 is a massive program. SuperCore is one aspect of that, and one language set that is included with it. So it's a fun thing to go to and explore. And in fact, I will touch on, give you an opening to Beeline before I come off of here. So I did mention Beeline, and I mentioned that it is a core word vocabulary set that is in Grid 3. But it's a pretty intense language set. So know that it's available, know that it does come with Grid 3, and know that it is something that is that may be valuable for some of your users. And then the only thing I forgot to show you in SuperCore 50 is you also have access to your keyboards and spelling. And I neglected to mention this earlier. So as you're building literacy skills, the keyboard is obviously extremely important. It's here. And it also, if you go into other keyboards, we've built in our phonics keyboards as well, which
Hat.
Okay.
Hat.
So I didn't want to neglect that. And I think I'm going to leave it there. Move to another shared screen here. this is just some contact information. But really, Grid 3 is a massive, massive program. And so please feel free to reach out. I know I just touched on really what is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Grid 3 and Core Word, but hopefully it gave you an introduction to the system. Hopefully it gave you an introduction to what it can do and what we really have valued as a core word language system within SuperCore. So I am going to leave it there and come out and see if anyone has any questions, anything I can clarify, because I know that it's a lot of information. It's a lot of new information because I think a lot of people haven't heard about SuperCore and or heard about Grid 3. And yeah, I hope it was informative.
Do we have any questions in the chat, or does anyone want to ask?
Feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your video if you'd like as well.
So I'm seeing one thing in the chat that says, is it free to use? The trial version is free to use. Grid 3 is a software program that actually can be bought, and as a standalone program, it also runs, like I said, on our devices that we make. And then the touchpad and then Grid for iPad is on the iOS side. So that's really, so that's kind of the answer there, is that you can download the software for free. You can use it to model, you can use it for printing out boards, you can use it for communication boards, things like that. The program itself is actually what runs the communication devices. So, but yeah.
There's another question in the chat.
Okay.
From Allison, and she says, I'm new to AAC. What makes this product unique? Parentheses, could be obvious to others.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple big things here. One of the biggest is that Grid 3 is running on Windows. It is a Windows piece of software. And so it is something that can be bought standalone, that can run on laptops. It can run on obviously Surface tablets and things like that. But it is, when it comes to communication software, a lot of what makes it unique is the fact that it is a standalone Windows software program. In addition to that, it's the language sets. It's SuperCore, it's Symbol Talker, it's those language sets that are unique to kind of the Smartbox environment. You know, when it comes to Core Word, there's other companies out there, and obviously that is really the buzz, is using core words and using them effectively and using them in a way that that allow you to really generalize your language to multiple environments. And that can be done on any device. I'm not going to lie about that. But what makes it unique is how it's presented and what forms it's presented in with SuperCore and Symbol Talker and Beeline and things like that. So, and I guess the last thing I'll say about that is that, you know, different users are going to have different preferences. And when we do our evaluations, that's the time to really look at what some of those differences are, including the access methods and how the user interacts with the device and the language systems. So absolutely. Lena, can a student use it to communicate with us? In best case scenario, the student has a communication device that they're using to communicate with us. And we as the communication partner are using that Grid 3 free download or trial version as a model for that student, and to really engage that student and show them how their device can be used and accessed. So. set.
Anyone else? Well, it's 5:32, so thanks for everyone for joining us. And I want to thank Doug for all this great information and volunteering your time to present to us during this series. And I want to remind everybody that we do AAC communication device evaluations here through the NAU AT Center. And I'm going to put my contact information again in the chat if you will need information on how to make a referral to us or any of the other agencies. We can provide you with that kind of information. All right. Thanks, Doug.
No problem. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I appreciate it.